Name is Victor Gamra. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called FortifyData. We're a cybersecurity risk management company. I think in this day and age, you've probably heard 90% of the vendors say the same thing, or automated cyber risk management software. I'll tell you a little bit about how we're different and the gaps we're solving, especially for automating cybersecurity risk management functions, as well as for third-party risk. This session is going to primarily focus on third-party risk management and what you can do to augment your existing processes. I'm sure everyone would appreciate that. As I mentioned, FortifyData is in the automated cybersecurity risk management space. We assess organizations in real time using direct assessment capabilities in combination with threat analysis or threat intelligence to help inform different sort of risk scenarios. We'll dive into that. We were recently awarded as a hot company in the security ratings market. So if anyone's familiar with other security rating solutions, I'm not going to mention names, but you probably know the data behind generating a risk rating. And there are a lot of doubts now as it relates to the integrity of the score, the accuracy of the score, a lot of misattributions of assets, things of that sort. So not having a lot of trust with representing an organization's risk level with what we call first generation risk ratings. So FortifyData was actually built to solve that problem. I'll dive into what that means. We're headquartered in Atlanta. So anyone from Atlanta here? It's just me? Great. I'm not a huge fan of stats, but traditionally it's always good to give you guys an update on what's going on in the market. Obviously, third parties are still a growing threat vector for a lot of organizations. Forrester recently revealed it's now 55%. I think maybe last year it was, or a couple of years ago, it was maybe 60 or so. Went down slightly, but it's still a major issue for a lot of organizations. Organizations are overwhelmed. They don't have enough resources. As you all know, staffing is a major problem, especially in the cybersecurity space. So a lot of companies are looking into automated solutions to augment their third-party risk management processes. Doesn't help with cybersecurity. First of all, we have an issue with the space, and there's a huge supply-demand issue. We don't have enough talent in the industry, and there are new trending problems now, like quiet quitting and whatever else is going on. A lot of you can't necessarily hold on to talent as easily as it used to be before. So again, organizations are looking into more automated capabilities to augment their teams. Some companies are switching over to managed services. But what good is a managed service provider if they're using the same processes and it's just data is a point-in-time assessment? We'll talk about that, what that means in just a moment. So to get started, I think I want to make it a little bit more interactive. If you wouldn't mind, I'll ask questions. Please feel free to answer. I just want to, get your thoughts. Who here is responsible for third-party risk management functions, or at least is a component of their job functions? Great. I'm assuming a lot of point-in-time analysis. Maybe you review SOC 2 and you send a questionnaire out. Yes? No? Okay. Once a year? Once every 3 years? Hopefully not. Yeah. Okay. It's risk-based. Exactly. And based on perhaps critical vendors, you more than likely do more frequently, but it's still a point-in-time analysis, right? And you see a lot of, the last session I had, or the last speaking engagement I was part of, some member in the audience said, "Oh, I will review the SOC 2 reports, and they're great." He was talking about a well. And interestingly enough, recently in the news, they were breached. But it's interesting how a lot of people in our industry, as security professionals, rely on SOC 2 reports and believe, for some odd reason, that's it's good enough for the entire relationship. You know, just send me your SOC 2 once it's renewed, and that's all that matters. Especially when you start talking about your most critical vendors, obviously we need to do better because it's not working. When you think about performance analysis on your organization, I'm sure your CISO wouldn't just rely on a SOC 2 or the business, itself, and the CEO or so forth, or the board wouldn't rely on a SOC 2 to understand or to assume that the organization's security posture is always perfect, right? We need a more proactive way in assessing cybersecurity risk on a continuous basis. So just give it some thought. And as it relates to what would you do better? What sort of solutions would you need to implement, or would you like to implement to perform a more continuous and more accurate assessment on third parties? That's where FortifyData comes in, but I'd like to take you guys through memory lane, if you wouldn't mind. This is how we've perceived the evolution of third-party risk management. Started off with manual methods. And again, apologies if some of you are still in this realm, but essentially point-in-time assessments aren't doing it, but that's how we started off. We started with questionnaires, maybe even Word documents, many, many years ago. A lot of organizations with mature security presence still use these methods. They're time-consuming. They're non-continuous, obviously. But they do help develop a baseline, right? Because you're assessing the security controls that they have in place. And they help, obviously meet compliance. Now, any compliance folks in the room? Combination, there you go. Well, I know some compliance folks don't like it when we say security is not compliance. Please don't be offended, but there are a lot of things that aren't compliance, but they do check the box, or aren't security, but they do check the box for compliance. And the manual methods that aren't working do check those boxes. So obviously solutions, I'll say about 10 years ago, evolved, or solutions came to play for improving these third-party risk management functions. And that's where first-generation security ratings came into play. So if you've ever heard of first-generation security rating provider using OSINT data, or some would say threat intel, passive analysis, essentially is using sources like Shodan, if you're familiar with Shodan, or any sort of OSINT feed, right, provider, to generate a risk score that determines the exposure level of an organization. And these first-generation security ratings providers have done a tremendous job getting a lot of market presence because organizations didn't know there were anything better. But now CISOs are starting to not rely on those products, and you hear a lot of times, I can't count how many times I've heard a CISO say, it's just a data point. I don't trust it. I don't trust a risk rating, right? I don't trust that risk rating provider because it presents a lot of false information, a lot of false positive data, misattributed assets. They're using like IP blocks to assess organizations instead of pinpointing your specific assets. It's a limited scope, and the data quality is just, it's a data point. It's just there, but it's not good enough. It's not the most comprehensive visibility of risk. But that's how the market started with security ratings, and it's better than nothing. FortifyData is regarded as a next generation risk management tool and risk analysis and ratings tool. So what do we do differently? What we do is we perform direct assessments, right? When you think about what you would do for your own organization, how do you perform at least the same level of analysis on any given organization with specific boundaries to make sure that we're doing it legally. So not running things like DDoS simulations or SQL injections, but being able to at least analyze an organization, not solely relying on OSINT data. You can use OSINT data to inform the likelihood of certain threat scenarios occurring. What are we seeing on this particular APT or threat actor, and what are they doing in the industry, and leveraging that data to say, okay, the likelihood of this threat event based on the vulnerabilities that exist within my organization is a little bit higher. So truly using general risk management frameworks. What is the vulnerability? What is the threat? And what is the impact? What is the likelihood of occurrence within my organization? So leveraging all these factors to inform risk and obviously generate a more accurate visibility of risk and an accurate score is what FortifyData is all about. Again, we do this in two main methods. A direct, which goes over the internet and performs its analysis, runs the query, pull the data back. So when you're looking at a specific vendor, you're looking at live data. You're looking at real data. You're not looking at 60 days, 90 days late, or something that's been solely retrieved from an open source Intel feed to rank or generate a score on a vendor. The methodology for asset collection or an asset inventory, ASM capabilities, is also different. We're not using a bottom-up approach, which is looking at IP blocks. We're using a top-down approach, which is what is this organization's root domain? What are the associated domains? Any entry that has a DNS, any DNS entry with a linked IP address will be considered an asset. Again, this completely, I'll say 99% of our clients have not, solely believe in our ASM capabilities compared to the competition or compared to first generation security ratings because, again, we're not using this IP block methodology to assume like, okay, here's your entire asset inventory and maybe half of them might not belong to you. So it gives you that true visibility and trust in the data. So again, the importance of using this sort of data for your third-party risk management functions, it produces a more accurate and automated way to perform asset inventory for yourself or your third parties. It's comprehensive, so we look at everything from a network layer, vulnerability analysis to web application. So we're checking OWASP top 10 related vulnerabilities. We are looking at OS related issues. Anything that we can externally capture and grab over the internet automatically. That's obviously legal. We're not running DDoS simulations or SQL injections, anything that could be intrusive or not, business disruptive. So it is the most accurate visibility, obviously, of risk analysis that you can absolutely get from anywhere, within the industry. Leveraging cyber threat intelligence, again, to help inform the likelihood of threat events occurring based on the vulnerabilities that we've identified. We're not just going to show you threat intel data because we have that information. We're actually going to show how it applies to certain types of vendors. What is this APT doing within this particular industry? Oh, guess what? You have vendors with a similar type of vulnerability that these types of threat actors are currently focused on. So it increases the likelihood. And when we talk about risk-based vulnerability management, I'm sure a lot of you might be using some similar tools for enterprise risk management. Imagine that sort of capabilities for your third parties, and that's what we provide. Obviously, when new vulnerabilities are created, leveraging those sort of, that continuous visibility is very important, because now you have, an example is Log4j. When Log4j came out, those security ratings providers, first generation ratings providers, couldn't generate those types of, or couldn't identify those types of vulnerabilities. But a direct analysis, a next generation security rating solution could. I'll speed up here because I've been queued and we only have a few minutes left. Again, providing a more configurable risk model. So not using a one-size-fits-all risk model to assess every vendor, every third party is very important. You can't use the same model to assess Microsoft, to assess the small mom and pop shop. Is a completely different attack surface. So being able to create different risk models that conforms or meets the threat landscape of a particular type of vendor or industry, you can create different risk models that's best suited for your organization's visible or for your visibility. Auto-validation of questionnaires. So this is where the integration of questionnaires is very important to align with the data. What we've done within the FortifyData platform is obviously vendors respond, and questionnaires are great. They're not going anywhere. They respond a certain way. I have these controls in place. I have a firewall. I have effective configuration, or I've effectively configured my ACLs. But the technical analysis is the true source of intel, right? That would inform you, are these controls effectively implemented, or are they gaps? Or is the vendor just responding to your questionnaire and just hoping that you just say, okay, well, they're good, let's move it on. This gives you the most accurate visibility and helps you identify those gaps without heavily relying on just the questionnaire responses. So it'll help you save time reviewing evidence, and again, this would be absolutely beneficial for identifying critical vulnerabilities within your third parties. Unfortunately, we don't have time. I thought this would be a great video to share from CISO, one of our customers. Again, we don't have time, unfortunately. Apologies for that. This is usually a 1-hour presentation. I try to shrink it here. So again, the adoption of next generation risk management, third-party risk management and ratings is the most important thing for the new set of organizations or capabilities from a security perspective that's needed to have an effective third-party risk management program. And in order to do that, you need to have direct assessments, or need to be able to perform direct assessments on organizations. It helps you save time with auto-validated capabilities as it relates to the alignment with the questionnaires. You can gain transparent visibility. The vendor sees that information. The vendor cannot doubt or can't dispute that information because it's true, it's real. It's not an open source, solely based on open source intel. And obviously allowing for collaborative capabilities so the vendors can log in and perhaps work on a particular remediation plan that you've created within the system. For all the attendees, if it's something you're interested in, a gentleman is back there. His name is Eric Smith. We can, if something you might be interested in exploring and assessing up to 5 vendors, we can run an assessment and show you what we can spit out on your most critical vendors. Just select 95. That's the most important to your organization. And let's show you what we can surface on them, and if it will help you with your informing risk and advising the business units and so forth. Again, we're at booth 60 if the gentleman is unavailable. And I hope you all have a great day, and thank you for your time.